Tell me I'm alive. Open up my eyes. Tell me I'm alive. Oh, gentle heart, oh, simple soul, you have come so far on your own. Do not turn back, do not lose hope. Who can say how far is left to go? And all the nights you walked alone, you follow lights to guide you. Or should the dawn refuse to rise? Should the darkness close on all sides? Well, may you find your heart next to mine, for we found hope in a hopeless time. Oh, gentle heart, oh, simple soul, there is still so much left to know. So plant your seeds and watch them grow. And keep on.
All right. Good morning, Watershed. It is Valentine's Day. I've got a 7-year-old son, and he used to say it was Valentine's with an M, and it was the cutest thing in the world, and I didn't correct him, and someone told him it was Valentine's, and I was really upset. But we are glad that you are here tuning in, and we want to welcome you. Want to hear where you're tuning in from. Maybe you stole away for the weekend somewhere for Valentine's Day, or maybe you are staycationing like we've done all year in our homes. So again, we're glad that you're here, and I want to take a second before we get started and just do a quick little thing. It's going to kind of theme throughout the morning, but we want to kind of introduce the band a little bit. And I want to introduce you to someone who's been in the band. You've probably seen here before, but just share a little bit. So we got Tyler over here singing. Yep. And he's been here through the pandemic, but I don't know, probably the past year off and on a little bit. But we're glad to have you. Ted, a staple on the guitar, rocking the Petty Thieves hat. All the Petty Thieves love right now. And then we've got Courtney, and I want to invite her up. And Courtney's been playing drums for a long time, but here at Watershed for, I don't know, the past 2 years-ish. And when she first started playing drums, we, had, everybody was in the room and everybody's in the building, and she would have her computer here because she was teaching. I think she was a teacher's assistant at that point. Is that right? Preschool teacher. She was getting her master's. Bachelor's. And then after that, you went and got your master's.
No, I'm working on my license now.
Working on her license. It was crazy. It was like nonstop. I was like, oh my gosh. And like, there was like one night a week that you weren't doing schoolwork and all this stuff. Anyways, super dedicated, has been here the whole time. But I want to invite Courtney up a little bit. And teachers, we love you. We love you so much. And we know that this past year has been incredibly difficult. Not just teachers, bus drivers and cafe workers and administrators and all of that. And we know that it's been difficult. And so we, on Valentine's Day, we've got a little bit of a gift that we're going to give you. I'm going to show you. Let's see if we can zoom in on this guy, maybe. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Valentine's Day love bug. And we're going to be talking more about it throughout the service. But kids, there's going to be an opportunity for our kids to join Blair and all the greenhouse team in making a craft. But it's really just to say that we love you teachers. And so before we keep going, I want to ask you a couple of questions, and maybe you can kind of speak for our community and teachers. We hope that you're seen in all of this. Again, we know it's hard. We know that it's not necessarily going to get any easier in the next few weeks. In CMS, I know that kids are going to be coming back to school, and that presents its own level of things that you're going to have to figure out and ways that you're going to have to re-engage. But in the pandemic, what has been like the hardest thing with like virtual teaching?
So I would say the hardest thing is just that you never feel like you're doing enough. Like even though you're trying your hardest, and whether you're a first-year teacher or you're a 20-year teacher, like everybody feels like there's just nothing, like they're just not doing enough. They're not reaching the kids enough just because it's online, you know, especially with kindergarten, you're trying to teach them how to read and you can't work with them individually. You have 21 kids on the screen at one time. So it's just like no matter what you do, it's just like you feel like you're just not reaching them to the point, you know, as if they were in person. So that's the most challenging part.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet. And I can't imagine training and doing all of your work to do it a certain way and then having that way kind of ripped from you a little bit. And then what are you looking forward to with kids coming back in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having them just with me, like having them in circle time, even though they're, you know, spaced out 6 feet apart, that they can sing with me and, you know, I can see that they're smiling with their raised eyebrows, you know, just a little bit of interaction and just the fact that I could pull a child aside and be like, hey, let's work on your reading. Let's work on your letters. I'm really excited to be able to do that and feel like I'm making a difference. And I am making a difference, but it's just so hard to gauge it this year. But I'm excited for that part.
That's awesome. Well, we want to thank you, one, for all the work that you do for kids in this community and for playing drums. And so here is your love bug.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. And teachers, you know, if you're on the stream, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know kind of how things are going for you. And we'd love to kind of connect with you and be able to share this gift with you this week. Again, everybody, we want to thank you for being here and excited about these next few moments. And hope that this morning, even though it's rainy and cold and all of that, that this morning can be a deep breath for you.
There is no fear, 'cause I believe there
Well, good morning. My name is David Roberts. I'm one of the pastors here on staff at Watershed, and I just want to take a brief intermission in the musical portion of our experience together this morning and get you all up to speed on a few things that are going on here at Watershed, albeit digitally for many of those things. First and foremost, one of my roles here is as the student or youth pastor, and so I just want to remind all of our middle and high school students that we will be meeting tonight at 7 p.m. Via Zoom, playing some games and then also continuing our current discussion series on race, equity, and justice, all power to all the people. And we had a great discussion 2 weeks ago, took last week off because I didn't want to compete with Tom Brady, and we're going to be back this Sunday to continue that conversation. If you'd like to join us, go to watershedcharlotte.com /watershed-students. Link should be in the comments, and you'll find the Zoom link as well as the schedule for what the next couple of weeks looks like as far as Shed Students goes, and the weeks that we're going to be on, the weeks that we're going to be off, and so forth. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is our book clubs. You've probably heard us talking about that for the last number of weeks. If you've been tuning in, we have a number of book clubs that have already started, some that are on the precipice of starting. Many of them are full, some of them still have room. One that I want to draw your attention to this morning is a book club around the book, The Relationship Cure. It's going to be led by Ryan and Kristen Middleton. This is one that we're newly announcing, and so there is still quite a bit of room in that one, as well as a few of the other ones. And so if you have any interest, there's going to be a link once again in the comments, or you can email Matt at watershedcharlotte.com to ask any specific questions, or if you have any trouble signing up or logging in or anything like that. But these book clubs are going to be ongoing. We'll have some additional clubs and blocks to announce in the coming weeks as well. Speaking of which, one additional block that I do want to highlight this morning, this one is particularly near and dear to my heart because I am the person who's going to be leading it, and that is the first iteration in 2021 of our Reclamation Block experience. This is something that we kicked off last year, kind of at the height of the pandemic in 2020, and I'm excited to continue it this year as well. If you've been around Watershed for about the last year, you've maybe heard us talk about our pathways, reclamation, transformation, and liberation. And the pathway or value of reclamation is our opportunity to explore ideas, beliefs, doctrines, kind of theological concepts that maybe we experienced one way growing up in an earlier part of our faith journey, and now we're exploring what might it look like to reimagine or reclaim some of these ideas for our present moment in this present context. And we're going to be getting a little ambitious with this next reclamation block because the topic is going to be Christianity itself. Yes, that might sound a little ambitious, bit of hubris there on my end. I will own that, but we are going to be reclaiming Christianity. What does it mean to be a Christian now? What has it meant historically to be a Christian? Can these things be reconciled? How do we make sense of the broad spectrum of seemingly disparate ideas, ideologies, politics, and what have you that all seem to claim or fall under the mantle Christianity? And so that is going to be kicking off next month in March. I want to say it's going to be the second, third, and fourth Tuesday in March. I'm pretty positive about that, but we will have a link for you in the comments and more information about reclamation in the coming weeks. Now, you've probably all seen me waving my friend around. Of course, Austin and Courtney introduced what this is a little bit earlier, a moment ago. But if you missed that or needed a little bit more information, immediately following Matt's talk this morning, stick around. Don't log off right away because our children's pastor, Blair Gore, is going to be hopping on with some instructions as to how you too and your children, your kids, can participate in appreciating our teachers by creating one of these love bugs. Full disclosure, I didn't make this one. It was handed to me before I got on stage, but I've grown quite fond of it. I've named it. This is Mothra, Queen of the Monsters. So yes, Tina, I do see other films. But this is adorable. And if you have a teacher in your life, I know we do. My kids' teachers have been incredible this year, doing things that they never, quite frankly, signed up for, and just kind of rolling with the punches and making what was already going to be a traumatic year for our students just a little bit easier and a little bit easier to bear. And so if you want to participate, stick around after. There should be some instructions, some supplies that have been on your screen as well. And then lastly, kind of just in closing, I want to, as we do every week, just thank all of you who literally make everything that we do here at Watershed possible, just through the faithfulness and your generosity and your giving of resources. This is an unprecedented year for us. We're coming up on 1 year. It'll be, it was around St. Patrick's Day weekend last year, so we're about a month away from coming up to 1 year of being fully digital as a church community. Unprecedented for us. We've had to explore avenues of creating community and building relationship that we never would have anticipated needing to be part of our identity and kind of collective being as a church. And so thank you for rolling with those punches. Thank you for all of your contributions, not just monetarily or financially, but time-wise and relationally as well. And so we try to make things as easy and as accessible as possible to give. So whether you are doing reoccurring gifts, thank you for that, or whether you kind of have gone above and beyond or kind of jumped in with a one-time extra gift, thank you for that. You can always do that through the link that you're going to see in the comments. There's a page on our website which kind of goes into more detail about how that money is stewarded, where it's going, as well as information about some cool programs that allow you to possibly get funds matched from your place of employment and things like that. And so all of that information will be in the comments. But thank you, those of you who continue to make the work that we do here at Watershed possible through your generosity. Good to see you as always, and thanks for being here, and back to you all.
Everyone knows all about my direction, and in my heart somewhere I wanna go there, but still I don't go there. Everybody say something, say something, say something, say something, say something, say something. I don't wanna get caught up in the rhythm of it, but I can't help myself. No, I can't help myself. No, no, no. Caught up in the middle of it, but I can't help myself. No, I can't help myself. No, no, no. Caught up in the middle of it. Maybe I'm looking for something I can't have. Maybe I'm looking for something I can't have.
All about my transgression, still in my heart somewhere, in melody and harmony, for you and me tonight. Oh, I hear them call my name,
say nothing at all.
Watershed. My name is Kelly McKinnon, and I've been hanging out with the Watershed community consistently for the past year or so. If you're thinking the name sounds familiar, it's because my husband Ray brought the message for the gathering last week and has been sharing periodically with the Watershed community probably for the past 2 or a year and a half or so. When Matt asked me to share a few weeks ago, I was really excited at first, but then I started to think about it, and I wasn't really sure what I could share. Most of you, if you've been a part of the Watershed community, have been on this journey collectively and individually of unlearning what you knew about race and blackness and whiteness already. So I didn't want to give you something that you could find online or in a book. So what I'm sharing with you is a little more personal. I feel like it's the genetic code to my resilience, and it feels a little bit like I'm letting you into my fortress of solitude today. All of Hebrews chapter 11 and the first part of chapter 12 is commonly referred to as the faith chapter, or the Hall of Fame, or the Hall of Faith, because it tells stories of people in the Old Testament who lived by faith through challenging circumstances. Then, in closing out this list of biblical heroes, we're reminded that we have a great cloud of witnesses who have faced trials of their own and are cheering us on in our own journey. So I think for me, knowing this verse and being able to connect it to my own family is really sustaining for me, and it holds one of the keys of living as a Black woman in America. The last section in that passage talks about a great cloud of witnesses. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my great cloud of witnesses. My great cloud includes my great-grandmother Lydia, who raised a daughter, and 5 sons. I like to imagine her as the OG boy mom. Lydia and her husband George have descendants all over the country that include doctors, teachers, lawyers, more than a few pastors, engineers, and artists. I'd like to think that the occasional flashes of brilliance that I have, being a mom to 4 boys, came directly from her. Maybe the brilliance comes from my great-grandma Pauline. My mom says she was creative and industrious. She could sew a quilt and build the bed to put it on. She raised 10 children and was the queen of taking what she had and turning it into what she needed. I have a sneaking suspicion that this quality has to be embedded in our DNA because her granddaughter, my mom, is the same way. Maybe some of this came from my grandma Maggie Francis, who we lovingly call Frank. She surely passed on some of her grit and resilience. She was a wife and a mother as a teen. She lost a child and later on her husband, and a lot of people would find that enough reason to not show up for themselves every day, but not Frank. She later went back to school and pursued her dream of becoming a writer, and she self-published a book of short stories. I think this great cloud of witnesses can also be seen in the way my ancestors would gather on Sundays. Aunts, uncles, cousins, kids all together after the Sunday service. My aunt recently told us about memories she had of going to my great-grandparents' house, Lonnie and Sarah. We still kept that tradition up as a kid. I remember driving to my grandparents' house after church on Sundays. I always thought it was fun to hang out with my cousins and see what surprises my grandma and grandpa might have had in store. But now I know how important it is to have a safe place to recharge and refresh before a new week begins. Those gatherings were kind of like, and still are, a port, a safe harbor from the storms of life. We still have them. They look a little differently now, mostly on Zoom. But you might have seen them before the pandemic, called the Cookout. Same principle. Whether it's Sunday dinner, the 4th of July cookout, or a birthday celebration, we find joy in each other. We make our own party. We understand the anger and the hurt that we work to shield ourselves and our families from every day. But when we get together, we get to put that aside. We laugh, we cry, we laugh until we cry. There will definitely be food, good stories, and more than likely someone will break out into song. My great Aunt Mary was the ultimate storyteller. She could recall 30-minute long stories she learned as a child well into her 90s, I think the last recording we have of her is when she was 97, telling this 30-minute long story about the barn raising. Both my grandpas could also spin a pretty good tale too, although they might tell you it was a true story. The sense of family and community never stopped though with our biological families. My great Cloud also gave me the gift of hospitality. For example, my Aunt Leon, who never had biological children of her own, she was just like a grandma to us and hosted the best sleepovers. She taught me how to make a pound cake and who to root for when watching wrestling on Saturday mornings. My Grandma Ruth and Grandpa Charlie were always ready to open their home and share with whoever needed them. Extended family, classmates of their kids and grandkids, neighbors. They treated everyone like family, even when others didn't offer them the same respect. So, from the door of no return, to the middle passage, to the very first woman to be brought here, Angela X, all the way down to my direct ancestors, Lydia and George, Lonnie and Sarah, Pauline and Clarence, Robert and Maggie, Charlie and Ruth, Michael and Cynthia, a whole host of aunts and uncles and cousins. These are my great Cloud. Thanks, y'all. See you later.
Yellow diamonds in the light, and we're standing side by side as your shadow crosses mine. What it takes to come alive. It's the way I'm feeling, I just can't deny. But I've got to let it go. We found love in a hopeless place. We found love in a hopeless place. We found love in a hopeless place. as your shadow crosses mine, what it takes to come alive.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Matt. I'm one of the co-pastors here. I don't know if you are like me, but over the last year to 4 years, through this pandemic, through all that we've been going through, the emotional peaks and valleys have been a little bit extreme. Is anybody with me on that? You know what I'm talking about? Like the smallest gesture of validation or love feels like this cold drink of water in a scorching hot desert, and simultaneous to that, or conversely to that, like the smallest disruption feels like a 5-alarm fire. Do you know what I'm talking about? I guess it was a couple of weeks ago we were in this space, and in a moment of weakness and against better judgment, myself and someone else found ourselves just hugging. It's like we couldn't resist. It was just, the temptation was too great. And it's like all the emotion was right here. It's like I could barely speak. I was so moved. A couple of months into the pandemic, I was at a local coffee shop, and out on the patio with her kids was Rochelle Fink. And all of a sudden the door swung open and she stuck her head in the door and with her mask on, yelled across the coffee shop, "Matt O'Neill, we miss you. Everybody, that's my pastor, Matt O'Neill." And people were like, "Who is this crazy woman?" But you could see the smiles underneath the mask. And it's like tears running down my cheek. It was a couple of weeks ago, a month ago actually, that my son Mez and I traveled to Jacksonville, Florida. We are huge Kentucky basketball fans, but also football fans, and they were in the Gator Bowl, and so we decided to make the trip. Usually we go to Lexington for a game at least once a year, kind of a dad, sort of son-dad event. Didn't think we were going to get to do it this year, and so we sat in a nearly empty stadium with masks and distanced and cheered our Wildcats on to victory. And then on the ride home that night, while it was dark, Mez had fallen asleep. And I was just overwhelmed with the gratitude for what felt a little normal, right? A little like what used to be. It's like in these moments, it's almost as if we're being healed. We're being touched by the divine. And then there's like the valleys, right? Those times when it's just really hard. It feels like emotionally charged moments where you're trying to swim in a full like wool pantsuit in the middle of a cold ocean, within the pressure cooker of hostility and anxiety and sadness and grief, like all these emotions that are just below the surface for so many of us. And like it creates this completely new dynamic. At least it does for us in our house, in our relationships. And so, for instance, what used to be, "Hey, boys, can you please remember to take out the trash when it's your day?" Over the last year has sounded more like, "If you don't take out the trash, I will feed you to the dogs." It's like a little bit more dialed up. What used to be, "Hey, kids and Donna, can you not turn the heat past 70? Can you please not do that?" Today is more like, like you clearly don't want to live here anymore, do you? Like, I see a future where your room is actually in the garage and you have a space heater. Then you can turn the heat up all you want, right? These huge extremes, these huge oscillations. A few years ago, one of our friends, Jonathan Bobbitt, while he was still living here in Charlotte, decided to take some kids that he was mentoring to Carowinds and spend the day there. And he called up Donna, my wife, and said, hey, do you and the kids want to go with us? We can hang out. For 26 years, I've tried to get Donna to ride on a roller coaster. Not one time has she said yes. And so on this particular day, she did. And I want to show you what happened. But in order to really give it some pizzazz, I've asked my friend Austin to come back to stage. And Austin, we were talking earlier, and it might be a good idea, we thought, to put a little music underneath of this. So what do you got going for us this morning? What are we going to be hearing?
It's going to be a little Van Halen on acoustic.
All right, check this out. Let's give it up for Austin. That was great. That was great. That's exactly what that video needed. Now, admittedly, there's a little bit of joy that you see in this metaphor, which I think is really, we need that right now, right? In fact, we've talked here at Watershed how joy is a form of resistance when it comes to suffering or injustice. But what an emotional roller coaster ride we've been on for the past year. And it would stand to reason that we're not always riding alone either, right? Like, there are people that we're connecting to in our relational ecosystems, whether we might be married or dating or in partnerships or in non-dating relationships. And if you're like me, it's been less than easy. There's this place in John's gospel where John recalls a conversation that Jesus is having between himself and some Jewish rulers, and they're trying to trap him in some of the things that he's saying. They hope to maybe arrest him or have him killed. But on the margins of this conversation are these other folks, the other members of the Jewish community, and they're hearing what Jesus is saying. And they've been listening for a while, and it's clear that they're beginning to resonate with him, and not just resonate, but really to the point they're starting to believe in him. And not just believe in him, but also believe in the world that he's envisioning, that he's attempting to describe as well as create. And sensing this, Jesus sort of turns and he says to them, listen, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples. In other words, if you really have been tracking along with what I see and you begin to take that to heart, like, you're going to be, there's a relationship that we're going to enter into, and you're going to be not just following me, but a part of this bigger movement that's taking place. And then he says this, he says, when this happens, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, you would think that would be enough for these people to hear, but listen to the response that they give him. They answered him by saying, we are offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? It's as though as soon as Jesus makes the direct correlation between truth and liberation, denial starts to sit in for the need of liberation. We don't need to be set free, is the response of this group of people. And you can almost envision a playful or maybe a little bit sarcastic or cynical Jesus responding with, oh, really? Like, you've never needed to be free. You've never been enslaved, really? So, like, the Persians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, like, no conscious memory of that. I mean, clearly you've never seen the Prince of Egypt, right? Like, you, not only have you been trapped in a history marked by slavery, but you're being enslaved right now. You are literally under Roman occupation in your most sacred city and through the bandwidth, the spectrum of your people. You are anything but free, but you need to be free. But in order to be free, first you have to deal with what's true. You have to acknowledge what's real. The average person, maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't. The average person experiences about 25,000 thoughts per day. 25,000 thoughts. I crunched the numbers a little bit. If you remove 6 hours of sleep, then that's about 1,400 thoughts per hour. That's about 23 thoughts every minute, most of which you never even noticed. I mean, in the last 60 seconds, you've had 20 to 25 thoughts, and maybe the only thing that you've actually really captured and held on to is this guy ever going to stop talking? That might be the limit to what you've actually noticed. 25,000 thoughts a day, 99% of which go unnoticed, most of which are assumed to be normal, unbiased, and the assumption is that those thoughts accurately portray reality. If you know the truth will set you free. What truth? What are you talking about? There's nothing here to see. This is normal, and I know what normal is. Susan David, who wrote a book called Emotional Agility, Get Unstuck, Embrace Change, and Thrive in Work and Life, writes this. She says, people frequently die in fires or crash landings because they try to escape through the same door they used when they entered. In their panic, they rely on established pattern instead of thinking of another way out. In the same manner, our suffering, our disengagement, our relationship challenges, and our other life difficulties are almost never solved by thinking in the same old automatic way. Being emotionally agile involves being sensitive to context and responding to the world as it is right now. We certainly don't want to put an end to the thoughts and emotions coursing through us, because that would mean the end to us or of us. But the question is, who is in charge? The thinker or the thought? Are we managing our own lives according to our own values and what is important to us, or are we simply being carried along by the tide? When we are not in charge of our own lives, when we're not acting according to our own thoughtful volition, and I love this part, and with the full range of emotions that a perceptive intelligence can conjure, that's when we get hooked. That's when we become addicted to our thoughts or our ideas, or more appropriately, I would surmise, the feelings that we often misconstrue as thoughts. When I was younger, and maybe this resonates for several of you out there, when I was younger, I had sort of this way of cycling through relationships. And so I would meet someone, and there would be some sort of mutual attraction, and then there would be sort of this feeling out of whether or not this was a good idea, both by me and the other person, and maybe I would engage my friends or my family and see, like, what kind of feelings do I have for this person? And that would often lead to almost like this rocket ship experience, if you felt like it was a good idea to begin in the relationship. And so it's almost like a rocket ship escaping gravity, all this energy, passion and intimacy and time together. And at some point, the feelings level out, and it's almost like there's an orbit that you sort of settle into until something starts to disrupt that orbit. And then over time, the same sort of energy that it took to escape the gravity of the past is also matched in the descent from the relationship that was in orbit. And usually the energy or the turbulence as you re-enter the atmosphere of reality is often the reality of, well, we break up and then we get back together. We break up and we get back together. And then we break up and we get back together. Has anybody ever been on that hamster wheel? That used to be the way that I would cycle through relationships, and not just once, but multiple times. I love what Peter Rollins says about this. He says there's a difference between breaking up with a person and breaking up with our thinking. He says it's not until you can notice how you think, it's not until you know the truth or deal with what's real about yourself that you can really create a future that's different from your past or present. I think another way of naming this is to say our emotions often masquerade as directives instead of data. In his book, You Are a Miracle and a Pain in the Ass, which was Donna's Valentine's gift to me this year. Thank you very much. In his book, Mike McCard spends quite a bit of time talking about the data side of our emotions and our thoughts. In other words, he talks about protons and neutrons and particles within a neuropathic community that surges through our brains, almost like a supercomputer or a neurological ecosystem full of exotic life. He says this, he says, you've been taught to think of yourself as an individual, but we're learning that's not the most accurate way to view a person. He says, you are a vast collection of brain cells and bacteria, a teeming ocean of life, checking Instagram for likes. Though you may think of yourself as the conductor of the orchestra that is your life, you are more like the orchestra itself, a myriad of musicians coming together to create a single symphony. In translation, you are a deeply complex creation of God. Like, before we go any further and before we get into too much more, can you just hear that this morning? Like, can I blindside you with that type of validation? Can I get you to top out emotionally? Because some of you might really need to hear this right now. That regardless of what's going on, if you don't hear anything, you are a tapestry of energy and mystery and beauty and life. You are the handiwork. You are the creation of the God of all that is. You are the animated gift of the universal Christ. But when your emotions, or when our emotions stay trapped in our directives, it's really hard to see this. Especially during a pandemic, especially when you're on the roller coaster. I think a lot of us stay bristled up in seasons like this. This is a picture of a porcupine. Can we get that up? Oh, there it is. Aren't they cute? They're so cute. By the way, if Donna is watching, babe, if you're watching, the answer to the question, can we have a porcupine, is the same answer to the question, can we have a kangaroo? Can we have a pygmy goat? Can we have miniature donkeys? Can we have a hamster? No. And this is a little personal business, so I apologize that I've stepped out of this morning's talk. Just want to maybe take this opportunity to publicly get this recorded with a cloud of witnesses. Thank you, Kelly McKinnon. Just want to make sure we got that on record. Porcupines are cute. They're beautiful. They're actually pretty sweet and engaging unless you stress them out. Unless they get backed into a corner. Because when that happens, it looks like this, right? By the way, when I was researching this talk, this was the tamest photos I could find. Don't Google porcupines quilling other things. It's very disturbing. When a porcupine gets stressed, whatever or whomever is closest, they become the victim of its quills. And that's true for us, right? In this season, how much easier has it been to quill? In this season, quilling makes everything challenging. It makes sharing space together challenging. It makes the time we spend together challenging. It makes affection more challenging. It makes sex more challenging. All right. I launched this joke with my kids this week. How do porcupines have sex? Very carefully. Just going to let that set for a few minutes. My kids thought that was funny, and they thought I should tell it. So this is an empty room. If I'm not entertaining myself, it's going to be really hard for everyone. That is the only thing you're going to remember about today, right? That and the roller coaster video. Nobody's watching anymore. All right, now we can really get rolling here. So for quilling, how do we live well relationally or emotionally, right? While we're on the roller coaster, while emotions are being directives instead of data. And so here's some things that might be helpful to hear. Like, we can all be porcupines, but like all porcupines have a tender underbelly. You probably knew this, but like if you roll them over, oddly enough, like they have this velvet, soft belly. And when they're not threatened, they're willing to actually expose that. When they feel safe, when they're not in a bristled state, they're willing to expose their softer underside. Audre Lorde, who's an activist and a poet, once wrote, "We have to study how to be tender with each other until it becomes a habit." And what does that look like? What sort of habits should we create? What does it take for us to reveal the soft, tender side, to expose ourselves, to shut down our self-defense mechanisms? It's really hard becoming vulnerable, isn't it? Especially in the pressure cooker world where we live. I think this is a little bit of what Paul might have been trying to get to in some of his writings in Ephesians 4. He talks about what it means to put off falsehood, to speak truthfully to our neighbors. And he's reminding the Christians of Ephesus in this particular writing that everything is connected. We're all part of a communal ecosystem. And in their language, it was the body of Christ. That was the language that they used. But he writes, he says, listen, in your anger, do not sin. He says, don't let the sun go down while you are still angry. Now, in the religious experience of my past, I was taught that that was like a mandate from God. And early on in my relationship, our relationship together, Donna and I, like we literally took that to heart. We would not go to sleep unless we had resolved some sort of conflict that we were experiencing together. And sometimes that worked, but to be honest with you, there were a lot of nights, it's like 1 or 2 in the morning, and we never really resolve anything. We just sort of tucker out, and one of us sort of cries uncle and says, all right, fine, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, can we go to sleep? And so nothing really productive takes place, and the next day you think you worked through things, but really something is still being harbored. And it's interesting because the Hebrew day, maybe you know this or don't, the Hebrew day begins at dusk, not like our day, which begins at dawn, right? And so really what's being invited here is before you step into the next thing, before you move into a new day, then make sure that you deal with what is happening right now. And the imagery is powerful because when the day starts at night, there's darkness that you have to work through to get to the light. And so often these days, we don't do anything conversationally when there's conflict after 10 o'clock in our house. It's like, it's pointless. Our brains are mush. And so Donna and I actually have a different practice where we trust that the relationship can still hold the love that we have for each other, and that if we can give our emotions time to stop being directives and let them move into data, it's crazy what we might see in the morning. And almost always we wake up with a new perspective, a perspective that usually begins with both of us owning things, apologizing, forgiving, and saying, hey, I love you. We're good now. Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, writes this. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. And so sometimes the space is literal, right? Like sometimes to interrupt the cycle, you got to just push pause and maybe take a walk or a drive. A lot of walks, a lot of drives in our house over the past year. Sometimes the space is about time, like going to sleep and letting time elapse and then waking up. That's a type of space. But I think what Frankl's suggestion, while those might be accessible and relevant, is the type of space we're invited to develop and create in real time. The space within the emotional, the emotional stimuli in real time, where we realize, wait a minute, things are being masqueraded here. These aren't really thoughts, these are emotions. Instead of letting our emotions be directives, we take full advantage of the opportunity that Dr. Susan David describes, the opportunity to act according to our own thoughtful volition and with the full range of options that a perceptive intelligence can conjure. When your emotions are directives, you are not functioning from any sort of perceptive intelligence. You think you are. Well, I think I am. I think I'm the smartest person in the room when I'm pissed off, right? But it's not true. You're actually less aware instead of more aware. And so let's wax practical for just a minute. What could it look like to expand on what Frankl's pointing to? Well, personally speaking, if you're like me, I dwell really harshly on the times when I get it wrong, when I blow it with other people because I didn't handle my emotions well, when I've quilled up, when I've needed a scapegoat to project my anger onto someone else and punish them, or maybe with avoidance or harshness or tone of voice. Or if I like, sometimes we punish others by withholding affection. And my experience has been that the work to try to move through that shame and guilt cycle is exhausting, especially when it's someone that I love so deeply. Our default within the space between our ears is to define ourselves in our worst moment. In our anger, we self-traumatize. We really do. And so our brain is conditioned to always gravitate towards the worst instead of the best. And, credit to Donna here, because so many times she's the person that says, hey, wait a minute, you're defining yourself by your worst moment. What about this, that, or the other thing? And so here's the question that might be worth asking. What is your practice of reflecting on when you actually get it right with your emotions? Do you even have a practice? What if you had a document on your phone or your computer, or you had a literal journal where once a day, a couple times a week, every so often throughout the month, you take time and you reflect on experiences when you showed up and you held the space with patience. You held the space with great mercy and compassion. Scientists tell us that it takes 14 times as much energy to retain a positive thought than it does to retain a negative thought. Paul says it this way. It says, focus on those things that are true and honest, anything that's pure or lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. If you don't have a practice of thinking on the right things, it would make sense that it would only take a few successive failings to suddenly convince you that you are lousy, which isn't true. Like all of a sudden your emotions begin to lie to you about who you are, not just who other people are. Practice remembering when you get it right. Study when you get it wrong, right? Almost like rewinding the game film in a place of reflection. Start to try to notice, like, all right, what was really going on to the surface? Remembering and reflecting are two different things. Remembering is like, all right, what happened? Where was I? What time was it? What did I say? What did they say? Reflecting is, why was all of this happening? What are the variables that were informing the emotions that I was having, and maybe the reactions of the person that I love? And what's crazy in all of this, and what's really awesome, is that when you can develop a practice of reflecting, my experience has been how humanizing it becomes in the way that you see the other person and yourself. And you realize, wow, like, there's a lot going on. And we might still have to work through some sense of forgiveness and repair. But that's Donna. And I love Donna, and Donna loves me. Or that's Sully or Mez or Jyoti. And for some of you, it might be that's the person that I want to be with in my life. Or that's my parent. This could even extend into just basic friendships and coworkers. When did I get it right? What did I learn when I got it wrong? And then finally, when have I been quilling and I didn't notice this? I didn't know it. And that's a really hard question. The first two you can kind of do on your own, and kind of hide away and try to work through that. But this one, man, you got to roll over and expose your softer side. In that posture, like you're trusting the voice of others to give you feedback that's honest. That will be difficult to hear. When you've rolled over and exposed your softer side, it's going to be really important that you do more listening than talking. That you live in a place of curiosity and reception versus blame or being a know-it-all. The minute you feel yourself being a know-it-all, guess what? You've rolled back over and you've got your quills ready to go. It'll feel like weakness. It'll feel like defenselessness, if that's even a word. But can I suggest that being in a defenseless posture, being in a posture of weakness, not only is that deeply biblical, if that matters for some of us, but we see this embodied in the words of Jesus, and we also see this lived out in the life of Jesus as well. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth, in our freedom. And so, Watershed, in the paradox of opposites. By the way, massive nod to Ray from last weekend. Oh my gosh, I wish Ray were here this morning. I don't know if he's in the comment section. He is. Ray, oh my gosh. Like, talk about validation last weekend that left me in tears. Thank you for that. I wish you were here so I could not hug you and wish that we could. But there was a point where you talked about living well in the paradox. And I'm like, man, that's almost like a benediction. And so in the spirit of Watershed, and thanks to our friend Ray, in the paradox of opposites, in the paradox between directives and data and the motions therein, may we be found by and in the God that created us, the God who entered into our suffering, and may we be held together by each other, animated by Spirit, held in the deepest place of grace in a Christ that lives and breathes in us as well as through us. May this be so. I love you, Watershed. I miss you. You're my community. If we were in Starbucks, I'd be yelling across the room right now. Don't go away, because Blair Gore has something really awesome that she wants to share with you. Thank you, and peace be with you.
Hi, Watershed friends. So, as you heard this morning, we are going to be making special presents for special teachers. We are so grateful for our teachers. So maybe you have a special teacher. Maybe it's one of your favorites. Maybe you're even an adult and you remember one of your special teachers from whenever you were in school. Or maybe you even have somebody now that you want to just surprise with a little love bomb love bug. So we are going to be creating one, and if you want to make it even more special, you can always stick a little present on the inside. What you're going to need is a toilet paper roll, or of course you can use a paper towel, and you can cut these to any size that you want. So we're going to do all this fun stuff. Then Miss Blair's going to use paint dot markers, because that's one of our favorite things. It makes me feel closer to all of you whenever I use the paint dot. So you can use regular paint if your parents say so, or if you're not feeling like it's a paint day, that's okay. You can also cover it with like special washi tape or duct tape like this. This player's got lots of colors. I'm obsessed with color. I know, I can't help it. You are too? Good, this is why we're friends. So, you need something fun to make some color. Or you could even leave it like this and then add little speckles of color to it. It's up to you. You are the artist here, and you are gonna make your teacher feel so loved whenever they get this. Let's see. Oh, a bug has to have eyeballs, so you need something for eyes. And I was thinking today, I was like, you know what? What if I didn't have googly eyes at home? I could use a bottle cap lid, 2 of them. Can you imagine bottle cap lids as eyeballs, and then you can color in a little eyeball in there? Yeah, I thought that would be cool. Let's see. What else do bugs have? They have eyes. They have are they called tentacles? I don't know what they're called. Legs. Look, we're going to use pipe cleaners as the legs. Again, if you don't have pipe cleaners at home, I'm sure you could find something cool. Toothpicks, or I'm trying to think of what else could be a cool, I don't know, spaghetti noodles even. Those would be cool things as well. And then you do need a little bit of construction paper, or either you can use printer paper or you can use notebook paper, whatever you want to do. But we have to make our wings with paper, and then we're going to glue it on. So you're going to need scissors, glue, toilet paper roll, something to make the legs, and something to make the wings. And then anything else you want to add to it. The world is your oyster. Not that it's really an oyster. That's just a saying that you have all the options in the world right now. You can use whatever you want. It's free for all. So any stickers that you have, I found some cool shaped stickers, and I found some cool, let me see if I can find them. I found some cool stickers with little instruments on them. I thought that would be fun too. So we are gonna have so much fun. Get your stuff together and let's get this party started. Well, there we go, friends. Look at our little bugs we made. I can't wait to see yours. Post a picture today and show me. Tag Watershed or Watershed Greenhouse so we can see your love bugs. Now, as you can see, I did add balloons on top of mine because I thought it kind of looked like hair a little bit. Not that you need hair, but this one right here that we gave to Miss Courtney today, it actually has a treat in it, a special treat. So you can kind of see I put a gift card inside there from all of us. So make sure you remind your teachers of how grateful you are for them and how much you love them. Give them a little love bomb. They're gonna love it. I can't wait to see them. And teachers, if you're watching this, we are so grateful that you have upended your whole life to make sure that our kids are still being seen, being heard, and feeling some kind of love, even through a computer screen. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We want to say Happy Valentine's Day. Bye, Greenhouse. Love you. Have a great week.